Morning, everyone. My name's Stonesy Boy, and welcome back to Reading with Stonesy. Sorry for no funny intro. I'm on a schedule. So, today we're reading pages 101 to 120. Shouldn't be that long. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. 15-second intro, by the way. Aiden got on his hands and knees. He winced. Not only was his back still sore from the fall, his knees were starting to protest all the crawling. Jace groaned when he got to his knees too. Sure, we had some knee pads. Aiden laughed. Yeah, that would be nice. He took a deep breath. Any ideas on how we find an exit? You're the thinker, Jace said. What do you think we should do? Aiden considered their alternatives. Finally, he said, let's try the systematic. Explore every main pipe and try each offshoot one by one. What do you think? Jace's at an enclosure of the entwined pipes. This place is big, but not that big. We should be able to find a way out if we do that. Aiden couldn't miss the doubt in Jace's voice. Jace clearly wasn't sure if he believed what he was saying. Aiden understood. He had similar concerns. If this part of the maze were deserted, that must have mean it was sealed off. And if it was sealed off, that probably meant there was no exit. But maybe Aiden was wrong. You can lead, Jace said. Your memory is better than mine. You can keep track of where we've been and where we haven't been. Aiden nodded and set off ahead of Jace. Envisioning everywhere they explored so far, he led Jace to the left, heading toward the pipes where they have yet tried. From there, he attempted to make their trek through pipes as sequential as possible, ticking off sections on a mental checklist as they went. Unfortunately, Aiden was wrong. No matter how many turns, ascents or descents they made, they couldn't find a way out of the partitioned off area. And then Jace who admitted defeat first when they retraced their path along the main pipe the second time. Jace said, hold up. Aiden stopped and looked at his friend. He sat back on his butt. We're trapped in here, aren't we? Aiden got off his knees and sat too. He leaned against the curved wall of the pipe. He let his head drop against the plastic. Aiden gazed through the other side of the pipe. Beyond it, you could see a little girl riding a Freddy replica on the carousel. The little girl's head was thrown back. Even though Aiden couldn't hear it, he knew he was laughing. Aiden shifted his gaze at Jace. He noticed that the vein in Jace's temple was throbbing like a strobe-like pace. Aiden realized that his heart was matching the rhythm. They were both scared. Yeah, Jace, I think we're trapped. Aiden could hear Jace breathing quicken. His vein pulsed even faster. Jace's eyes filled with tears. He quickly wiped his face and back of his hand. Aiden wanted to tell Jace it was okay, and he wanted to cry because Aiden wanted to cry too, but he couldn't get his mouth to work. Aiden cleared his throat and licked his lips. He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, a muffled scratching sound stopped him. Jace inhaled sharply and spun around to look at the sound. What was that? Aiden frowned and shook his head. Both he and Jace cocked their heads, listening intently. At first they heard nothing, then a distant scrape that was followed by a faint cackle of static. Both boys tensed, neither made a sound. For several more seconds they listened, then Jace exhaled. Aiden realized that they were holding his breath too. He let it out. Jace glanced over at Aiden. Do we want to think about what that was? Aiden shook his head. Better not to think about how to get out of here. Jace nodded and rubbed his face. Okay, let's think this through. Okay, we've been looking for an exit, but we haven't found one. Thank you, Mr. Obvious. Jace winced. Sorry, Jace, I'm not at my best. I get it. Several seconds of silence passed. Finally, Aiden encouraged Jace to continue. Go on. You sound like you're leading up to an idea. Jace sighed. Well, it's not a very good one. Not very good one is better than none at all, and I've got nothing. Jace bit his lower lip, and then he leaned forward. Okay, so we know there's an opening on the second level. We're trying to get through the partition. What if we could find our way back there? And we could work at the seam some more. That partition might have weakened the pipe fell. We weren't able to pry it open from the other side, but maybe we can fall from this side. Aiden frowned. But the pipe to the other side of that seam was what fell. And what if we had nowhere to go from there, even if we got through the partition? Jace shook his head. The part of the pipe that fell was only 3 feet or so long. If we could get to the partition loose, we can use it as a bridge across the opening. Well, we might be able to pry the partition open, but what if we can't get it completely loose? Aiden asked. Jace twisted his mouth. Well, we might be able to swing ourselves across, like hang from the pipe on the side and then swing over to the other, like on the bars in gym class. Aiden thought this was an idea. It was pretty weak. He and Jace were ridiculously unathletic, and even if they were strong and coordinated, broken climbing pipes are different from gymnastic bars. But did Aiden have anything better? Before Aiden could respond, Jace gave Aiden a weak grin and pulled out his Swiss Army knife. And I still have my mighty sword. Aiden laughed. He painfully returned to his knees. Yeah, okay, sir, Jace. Let's do it. Lead on. Jace tried to help his grin in place, so he returned to his knees. Aiden pretended his grin was defective, and he pretended he couldn't hear Jace's occasional whimpers. Jace led quickly back to the spot. Aiden tried to break through before they had fallen into this area. Although getting to the right place wasn't the problem, finding the seam took a little effort. It was, after all, just the narrowest of slits in the plastic along one short section of pipe. Both Aiden and Jace felt they were very long way on the wall of the pipe to find it. As soon as they located the seam, Joe pulled out his knife. Flipping it to the main blade, he began to sawing along the scant opening that Aiden had created earlier. Aiden could do nothing but watch. He had no knife of his own. After a few minutes, Jay stopped his hand. It's not working. He wiped his eyes again. Aiden leaned against Jay's shoulder and examined the opening. Then he leaned closer still. His heart did a little stutter instead of hope. Actually, yes it is, he said. Look. Aiden pointed at a series of fine stress fractures opening along the opening. Whether Jay had made them with his knife or they'd been created with the pipe collapse, Aiden didn't know. He did, however, think or hope that the stress fractures might have weakened the joint enough to be able to kick the partition free. When Jay spotted the stress fractures, his eyes lit up. Do you think? He didn't finish the thought. Back up, my legs are longer. I'll do the kicking. Jace nodded and scooted out of the way. Aiden took up the position on his butt, propped backwards on his hands. He pulled his legs as tight to his body as he could and coiled them up as power as possible, then thrust his feet out as hard and fast. Crack. The plastic protested the impact, but it held. Aiden didn't care. He pulled his knees in and he kicked out again and again. Breathing hard, Aiden paused after the third kick. He sat forward and looked at the seam. The cracks extended farther from the opening. He was getting somewhere. He set up a kick some more. And on the sixth kick, the plastic gave in. The partition popped loose at the seam, and it swung open like a miniature doorway. Behind Aiden, Jay shouted, "Yes!" Aiden grinned, panting. He sat forward and started to grasp the partition. "Surely we'll be able to free from the other side of this opening too. Help me," Aiden said. Jay shooted it up against Aiden. He started to reach for the plastic, and then he stopped. His hand dropped, and he made a little choking sound in his throat. Aiden took a look at Jace. "What's wrong?" Jace pointed. Aiden immediately saw what Jace had already seen. Although Jace is on the right gap of the partition, the intact pipe was still small enough to get across. There was an insurmountable problem on the other side. One of the two-way mirror partitions had been put into place at the far side of the gap. There's no way to pass that. Aiden collapsed onto his back, utterly defeated. Jay slumped next to him. "Sorry, Aiden," Jay said. "It was a dumb idea." Aiden shook his head. "No, it was..." He stopped. From farther along the pipe they were in, a whirring sound from the other came from their way. Aiden sat up. "Is that Happs?" he asked. Jace cocked his head and listened. The whirring sound was intersped, and the thud and a scrape. "If it is, he doesn't sound the way he normally sounds." Aiden stared down the pipe. Jace was right. The robot sounded clunky, like he was damaged. The robot's noisy approach got louder. The boys gazed down the length of the tube, waiting. Aiden realized he was holding his breath, and he quietly let it out. Beside him, Jace was trembling and breathing in sharp gasps. What was Jace afraid? Wasn't Happs programmed to help kids in the maze? Broken or not, couldn't he get them out? Shouldn't they have been eager to see Happs? Jace got to his knees and aimed himself in the opposite direction to Happs' approach. "We need to get out of here, Aiden," he whispered. His words came out so fast they ran together. It took Aiden a second to process what Jace said. In a second, the danger that Jason treated became clear. From around the bend of the pipe just a few feet away, Happs appeared, but he did not look happy. His face cracked, one of his eyes dark, and the yellow security light on top of the head sheared away. Happs' signature smile in his place. The smile, however, was incomplete. Half of the glowing teeth were gone, and his up-curved mouth had been shattered into one side. His turned his cheerful expression into a malevolent sneer. Even though Happs' metal torso appeared to be unscathed, the robot no longer looked friendly. As soon as Happs spotted the boys, he spoke. Sort of. His programming had obviously been damaged because only partial of the usual spiel came through. What he said was, "Lost out with me." The words, there was static gaps separating them, and they weren't spoken in Happs' usual sprightly tone. Happs' high-pitched tone had dropped a couple octaves. His tones were low and guttural. They sounded threatening. It wasn't Happs' words that kicked the boys into gear, though. It was his hands. Jay shouted, "Come on!" As he began crawling madly away from Happs, Aiden didn't hesitate. He crawled as fast as he could in Jace's wake. Behind the boys, Happs clattered and scraped his way along. Each scrape made Aiden flinch. His whole body was wounded into a knot of tense terror. As Aiden and Jace scrabbled through the tube, Aiden got out of the foam hands that always made Happs look so harmless and helpful. Those hands were gone. Probably ripped free from the pipe fell, and the foam was no longer there to conceal the metallic workings they'd covered. Without the foam, the robot's spiky metal pincers were exposed. And in a few seconds, Aiden had looked at Happs. He realized the missing from hands were what made the robot a threat. The pincers had been sheared off as well. Instead, the mechanism would grip and be useful. Happs now would be lethal metal shards on the end of his arms. His arm joints were damaged as well, so each articulation was jagged. His friendly-looking arms had morphed into threatening metal extensions protruding into his torso, and he was flailing the menacing sharp edges, and the extensions grabbed and slashed at the pipe walls as he passed. "This way," Jace shouted. He took a left into the descending tube. Before Aiden pushed off the scoot after Jace, he turned back to check on Happs. He mangled robot was rolling toward him, about 15 feet away. Thankfully, Happs wasn't moving at full speed. Aiden realized this is because one of Happs' treads was hanging partially off its runner, and the other rolling track was askew. It was causing Happs to lurch consistently into his right. The other track was working to put Happs back in the direction. Happs wanted to go to the constant oppositional yank and pull made for a much more slower process than the robot should have been capable of. Slower, though, was a relative term, and in just a few seconds that Aiden spent examining Happs' progress, Happs had almost managed to get within arm's reach of Aiden. Aiden quickly flipped from his knees onto his butt, pushing off his hands. He propelled himself down the sloping pipe, wishing that the slope would be steeper. Although the pipe descended like a slide, it was a manic slide, probably intended for smaller kids who were afraid of the steep, flat slides. Ahead of Jaden, Jason was also putting on his butt, his legs straight out in front of him. He was using his hands to push off the bottom of the pipe, pretending to scoot faster than gravity alone allowed. Aiden mimicked Jace's movements. Behind him, a metallic thunk came and made a spot between Aiden's shoulder blades tingle. His imagination provided him a frighteningly clear image of Happs' honed metal spearing Aiden in the back. Aiden was afraid of the downward cant of the pipe could have given Happs more speed than Jace and Aiden were managing. It didn't help that Happs was now repeating the same thing he said when he first spotted him a few minutes before. "Lost. Out. With me." Happs kept saying. Unnerving, crackling sound each word. Aiden realized that there was more of his head than in the pipe, and then his feet suddenly encountered Jason's butt. Forcing himself not to think of the pursuing robot, Aiden focused on his friend and realized that Jason would scramble to his knees. His setting rope 2 had ended. "I see a ladder pipe," Jace shouted. "He's slower in ladders. Come on." "Good thinking," Aiden said as he too repositioned himself onto his knees. Sparing a glance behind him, he convinced that implantment was likely possible any second. Aiden gasped. He was right. The end of Happs' cutting-edge hands were a couple feet from Aiden's side. Aiden yelped, lunged after Jace, and groped for the highest rung of the ladder which he could reach. He pulled his legs up as fast as he could, scrambled up the ladder behind Jace, who was climbing like a monkey with his tail on fire. The ladder wasn't long, maybe 20 feet at the most. Then Aiden reached the top of it, and he found Jace frowning at the 2 pipe openings available to them. Both of them appeared to be level pipes. "Lost. Out. With me." Happs' gargled words echoed up from the bottom of the ladder pipe. Aiden pulled his legs off the ladder and looked down. He exhaled in relief. Happs was still on the bottom of the ladder because Happs was always used to foam hands that gripped the rungs, and those foam hands were missing. The robot could only swipe at the rungs. His swipes were carving up the rungs, cutting them from the pipe walls. Apparently aware that his hands weren't working right, Happs thrust out a third limb, the telescoping extender that came from his middle. He tried to use it to grab one of the rungs he'd cut up, but the extender wasn't functioning either, at least not as anything could grip. It too had been damaged, and now looked more serrated knife than a cleaning tool. That additionally deadly weapon wasn't good, Aiden thought, but at least Happs didn't have a way to climb up after the boys. "Which way do you think?" Jace asked. Aiden turned and looked at Jace's tight red face. Jace's face was smeared with tear tracks. Aiden pretended not to notice. "I have no idea. It may not matter. If we stay on this ladder, we might be okay. Look." Aiden pointed at Happs, who was trying to flail and grab the ladder ring. Jace hesitated, clearly not wanting to move even an inch closer where Happs was. Then he creeped up next to Aiden and looked down the ladder pipe. Aiden felt Jace's top muscles loosen lightly, and he heard Jace exhale. Aiden started to turn and examine the 2 pipes leading away from the top of the ladder pipe, but Jace grabbed his arm. Aiden looked back. "Aiden, look!" Aiden glanced at Jace, who was still staring intently at the bottom of the ladder pipe. Aiden shifted the gaze direction, just in time to watch one of the 2-way mirrored safety panels sliding into place above Happs. A switch room clicked, and Happs was no longer in the view. Jason and Aiden were now looking at the reflections of themselves in the mirror surface of the safety door. In spite of the situation, Aiden couldn't help but notice he nor Jace were looking their best. Aiden sat back on the heels and tried to smooth his hair. Now he would know they were more crazed than usual. He wiped the slick sheen sweat off his dirty face, careful to avoid a swollen eye. The area found it was deep, dark purple. Jace too scrubbed at his face. He would like to see tear tracks on his cheeks. "I'm not sure if this partition is a good thing or a bad thing," he said. Aiden nodded. "I get you. On one hand, Happs can't climb up here after us. On the other hand, if the safety doors are closing off wherever he's been, we're going to have less and less room to maneuver." I didn't think about it at the time. I was too busy thinking about getting away from the pipe behind Happs was pretty torn up. He must have been damaging things right and left. Jace frowned and nodded. "So, what do we do?" Aiden had no idea. He looked at the 2 pipe openings. Which one would he keep away from Happs? Jace nudged Aiden. "You have better memory than I do. Can you remember any of the layout in here? I've been trying to picture it in my head. It's kind of a blur. Give me a second to think." Jace nodded. He closed his eyes and he could make the problem disappear by not seeing it. Aiden leaned back against the pipe wall, but instead of Thinking of the maze layout, he took out the two-way mirror that separated them from the rest of the pizzaplex. They were so close to help. Below them, just beyond the pipe they were in, two young boys were strapped into giant swings. Both swords were redheads, probably brothers. They had identical grins. They were having so much fun. Past them, Aiden could see a bumper cars sizzling away at that. Although the scene was blurred because of the layers of colored plastic separating the twos from the bumper car area, Aiden was pretty sure Nora and her friends were in the four of the cars. They were ramming several cars driven by guys in leather jackets, and it was a whole other world. Not just bumper cars, but a social circle enveloped kids like Nora and her friends. Aiden had already wondered what it would be like to have a place in a network like that. Aiden pulled his gaze from the distant bumper cars and he looked at Jace. Jace, too, was now gazing at kids having fun outside the maze. Suddenly, Jace got up to his knees, faced the pipe's wall, and started pounding at the sides of that pipe. "Help!" he screamed. "Help us! We're stuck in here! Hey, help!" Jace's panic was infectious. Aiden started pounding a plastic tube. "Help!" he bellowed at the top of his lungs. "We're in here! Help us!" Aiden wasn't sure how long they hammered at the plastic with their fists and shouted as loud as they could. It would have been seconds or hours. It was probably at least a few minutes because when Aiden's last help broke out into a rasp, he realized his throat was on fire. His fists throbbed. Aiden put his head on his hands. Jace was still about thinking, but his voice was getting hoarse. His strikes on the plastic were weakening. Aiden touched Jace's arm. Jace whipped around. Spittle dripped from the sides of his mouth. His face was red from exertion. "They can't hear us," Aiden said. "Too much sound muffling in here and too much noise out there." Jace wiped his mouth. He opened it like he was going to argue, then exhaled loudly. "I know." Flopping back on his butt, Jace looked away from Aiden. He was trying to pull himself together. They sat in silence for a few seconds. Finally, Jace cleared his throat and then turned to Alan. "Have you figured it out yet?" Aiden sighed and hadn't figured anything out. He'd been too busy pointlessly yelling his head off. Yes, he remembered the maze layout pretty well, but it didn't mean good to him a lot of good. He shrugged and pointed at one of the pipes. "I think we could take the left pipe there and it will keep us off the level." He dropped his hand. "But the trouble is, what good does it that do us? And we're going to crawl back and forth until our knees are bloody. It's not like there's a way up here," and he gestured at the kids and adults outside the maze. "They can't see us or hear us. I'm wondering if we should just stay here. Maybe someone will come looking for us." "Like who?" Jason's question was almost whispered, as if he barely had the strength to ask it. "Our parents?" His mouth twisted. "Good point." Aiden tried to think of something helpful to say. Jason beat him to it. "Actually, maybe you're right. Maybe Fazbear Entertainment people who know workers will find us. Would they send someone in to repair the pipes?" "Eventually." Jason was silent. He stared at the sneakers. "Eventually," he repeated. His face was pale. Aiden nodded. He was feeling on his face was pale and Jace. Aiden pressed his hands against the pale blue plastic beneath him. "I don't think we should stay here. Happs may not be able to climb ladders, but he's all too good at finding an ascending pipe, and we'll get up to his level eventually. If we stay here, we can box us in." Jace nodded. "I remember a couple of junctions where there were like at least 4 offshoots. If we got one of those, we could rest and think some more. We might have multiple escape routes if Happs find us." "Good idea." Aiden used his chin to gesture at the left pipe opening. "I think that one will get us to one of those junctions." Jace nodded. Aiden cringed as he pushed himself up onto his knees, then Jace didn't move. Aiden turned to look at his friend. Jace stared down at the bumper cars. "I wish we'd taken out our frustration with the cars instead of coming in here." "Yeah, you and me both." Aiden crawled toward the left pipe opening. He assumed Jace would follow him, which he did. The pipe was straight for 50 feet or so, and then took a big gradual turn and started heading downward. Aiden didn't want to go down, so he quickly looked at the alternative route. He spot one. He turned away, but he brought up a short and just a couple feet. It was blocked off by 1 and 2-way mirror safety barriers. Aiden gestured for the barrier. "I don't remember that being there when we passed here earlier." He looked around. "I remember this pipe. It was a distinctive pipe, aqua and multicolored polka dots." Jace nodded. "I do too. And no, that wasn't there." Aiden frowned. "That means Happs was close by. He damaged more tubes and they were closed off." "That's not good." Aiden looked for another offshoot. "We can go this way. I'm pretty sure it goes to the part of the maze that wasn't connected to the main conduits. If it had meant to the main conduit, our options are going to be limited." "Yeah, I figured that." Jason looked down the offshoot. "Want to go try it anyway? We might be still able to find a junction where they can watch for Happs." Jason licked his lips. "I'm sure I wish I had some water." "Me too," Aiden sighed. "Yeah, we might as well go that way." He pointed at the offshoot and started crawling in the direction. "You with me?" Jace nodded. Aiden continued on. He could hear Jace shuffle close behind. Nora let out a shriek when Wyatt's big orange car hurtled into the side of Nora's hot pink one. His car hit her so hard that the impact literally rattled her teeth. Her head jerked so far to the left that her earring gouged her neck. "Hey!" she protested. Wyatt didn't hear her. Not only was the hum of all the bumper cars louder than the rock music blasting from the arena speakers was even louder. Her voice was lost in the racket. Wyatt grinned at her. He gave him a best fuming, dirty look, which didn't bother him at all. He winked and turned his car to go after someone else.
Nora clenched her steering wheel and stopped up the accelerator. Heading after Wyatt, she needed some payback. Whizzing past a couple of her friends, Nora kept Wyatt on her sights. As she aimed toward the arena's short outside wall, she extended the skirt past the meat lay in the middle of the sneak up on Wyatt. As she scooted along the wall, Nora glanced over the top of the wall. Beyond it, she could see a labyrinth of dark plastic pipes that extended into darkness in the distance. Something about tangled plastic gave Nora a heebie-jeebies. She wondered if it was back there. A scream pulled her attention to the arena. Out in front of her, Wyatt and his friends were ganging up with some smaller kids who were having trouble controlling the cars. Nora forgot about the pipes as she stopped on her accelerator. She focused on Wyatt and aimed right at them. Aiden lost track of the number of pipes he and Jace wound through before they finally found a big junction that gave him a reasonable line of sight down every approaching tube. The multiple openings would provide several escape routes and would allow boys to enter here better. The more open maze was, the less the pipes muted the sound. Aiden shifted into the sitting position. Jace gave a turn. Aiden pointed at the various openings in turn. That one is a ladder down. I don't think it's going to be a good option. Happs could be laying himself down after us. He pointed at the next openings. Those are level, so we should stay that way. But Happs would probably come after us pretty easily. He pointed at the last opening. I think it's going to be the climbing pipe would be best. We already know Happs can't do ladders, and we don't see how he could be climbing ladders without foam hands. Jason looked at the climbing pipe opening. But what's up there? How do we even know another blocked off area? Aiden crawled to the opening and looked up the ladder. He exhaled loudly. It looks clear. He turned to a sitting position. He turned to rubbed his knees. The boys didn't speak for several minutes. Finally, Jace broke the silence. I feel bad about kicking Happs. I feel bad about a lot of things. Jace stared at his feet. Then he looked up at Aiden. Do you think robots were vindictive? Aiden made a face. What? You think Happs is trying to get back at us for kicking him? You think he turned his arms into weapons so he can exact bloody revenge? Aiden gave Jason an "are you kidding me" look. Happs is high-tech, but he's a robot. Robots don't feel. Therefore, they can't be vindictive. Jason's mouth dropped. Yeah, of course you're right. I'm being dumb. Aiden punched Jason's arm. You're never dumb. You're just the smartest person I know. And you know, like, what, 5 people? Aiden laughed. Good point. He sobered and poked his face. I mean, you're smart. You're not smart enough to get us out of here. Aiden shook his head. We'll figure something out. Although he tried to put confidence in his words, then he spoke them. As soon as they were out of his mouth, Aiden could hear the lie. He realized what he didn't believe what. A screeching scrape cut into Aiden's thoughts. The scrape was followed by a series of clunks, and then the distant snort of the robots. Out with me.
Well, that's all the time we have today. So, I hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. If you like, be fishy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And, well, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Oh, wait, before we go, actually. I'm sorry. Next time we're reading 221 to 138. Sorry, 121 to 138. So, pretty short episode. But, yeah.